Okay, so today I want to start off by talking about a movie that I feel like the Lord led me to watch, and this movie is called Mansfield Park, and it is a little bit similar to Cinderella's story in a way, because she ends up working and serving a family. Well, it's her relative, and she came from um, just a poverty-stricken background, but she was placed in this home where, it was more fancy and upscale. She had to take care of the needs of, the family living there. And from childhood, they treated her as less than. So in that way, it was kind of similar to the Cinderella story. And they didn't really take her seriously when it came to her being with a man because of what they considered her status to be. But she eventually had to break out of not considering herself worthy of love or worthy of someone that could love her and be with her. So, once she gets older, her I think I don't know, they're not stepsisters. I think they're cousins, but the other girls that are around her age, they're in the stage where they're trying to look for being married, and one of the girls ends up being engaged to someone that she has no feelings for. There's actually someone else she's interested in, but that someone else ends up pursuing. Her name is Fanny, the main character. But Fanny does not trust him, and she's actually in love with Edmund, which is the person who was always there for her, supporting her when she was younger. He was able to make her laugh and smile, when she was feeling down. And they just really had a friendship that really flowed naturally. And she developed feelings for him. And she kind of recognized that when this whole thing was happening. But there was another person that also came to visit, and this was a woman. She was looking for someone to be with, and so she was interested in Edmund. So basically, they were both kind of almost forced into these counterfeit relationships because that was kind of like what they came for. And the father, Edmund's father, wanted him to marry her. He was interested in her initially, and he told Fanny that he was drawn to her, and that made Fanny a little bit upset, um, because she was kind of observing from the outside, but she knew him better than the other girl knew him. And so Edmund was a clergyman, and I think the girl, I think was her name Mary. I can try to check. Yeah, her name is Mary Crawford. So Mary doesn't really think that his desire to be a clergyman is like a really um she just kind of looks down on that position. She's like, "Oh, you should have done law. You could do anything else." But I was looking up like what it means to be a clergyman. It's really being like a minister or a priest. And so through that, I feel like the Lord was just showing that, even when it comes to these relationships that God is establishing, the man is going to be a man of God. He's going to be a man that wants to serve the Lord and serve people, for God's glory. And that was really what Edmund represented. And with Mary kind of condemning that role, that showed that she wasn't the suitable companion for him. because when Mary was talking down on him being a clergyman, Fanny was defending him, saying that's a really good position and that's what he wants to do and he should do it. So then, the other guy is still trying to pursue Fanny, but she does not genuinely want him. But Edmund's father tries to force her to marry him, and she refuses. Um, and he gets very upset with her, and he basically is like, so do you want to just leave here and go back to, you know, your mother's house where it was just full of poverty? And she said, I'd rather go there. So they experienced the separation, because even when you know she said no to marrying the other guy, Edmund wasn't there to say, hey, I actually like her and I want to be with her, because even his father was not wanting his father was wanting him to marry the woman Mary. And he was like settling for it, but it wasn't what he truly wanted. But he just kind of was going along with it. But when it was time for Fanny to leave, she was very sad. She gave him a hug goodbye, and she said, she'll write to him and everything. And that was another thing. They had a very unique bond, because they were able to relate to each other on an intellectual level, and also on a spiritual level. So she was saying that she would write letters, because she was a writer, and so she goes back home, and it's definitely an adjustment, because it's where she lived, it was poverty, and her mother sent her there to work there, because she was kind of like, she was basically the chosen one. She was smart, she was bright, and I think that her mother sent her there because she thought that she'd probably have a better future there, even though that was still being like a servant, and the people there intended for her to stay there for life. But her mother sent her there because she thought it would be better than living at home where it was all the siblings there, and she just didn't really have the space to really thrive. So she goes back. So they're in this time of separation, and she's just kind of accepting, like, this is what it is. And the guy that was pursuing her comes to her house, her mother's house where she's staying, and again tries to persuade her to be with him. And she has this dream where she says yes to him, and she's, like hugging him and I think possibly kissing him, I don't remember. But then she wakes up from that dream and she realizes, no, like, I don't actually want you. So she tells him that, and he gets upset and he storms off. And he goes back to Mansfield Park where the richer family lived. And she kind of just adjusts to life there. She still misses Edmund and everything, but she chose to walk away because he wasn't willing to commit to her, and go against, what his father wanted. He was still willing to settle for Mary. So one day there's someone that comes over to her mother's house, and there's basically an emergency, and they need Fanny's help to take care of, I think it's Edmund's either friend or brother that's not doing well. So she has to go back there to take care of him. And so when she's there, it's a little awkward because she sees the guy that was trying to pursue her. And that was another thing. She had told Edmund's father that she didn't trust him. And there's a point like when she returns where she realizes like her discernment was correct, because one day, she's taking care of him. She goes to bed. She hears a lot of noise and she goes to see what's going on. And basically, the guy that was trying to pursue her was basically being intimate with the other girl that he was originally interested in. So the guy that was pursuing Fanny was originally interested in the other girl that was engaged, but when the girl saw that he was trying to pursue Fanny, she kind of let it go and she just rushed into marrying the guy she was engaged to, even though she didn't want to be with him and she wasn't happy in that. But she just rushed into it because she thought that the guy wanted Fanny. So then, you know, Fanny sees this happening and she gets Edmund in the room and he sees what's happening because, okay, so this is actually Edmund's sister, the girl. And he's like trying to process what's happening, and then she says, "Oh, don't judge me. So basically, they both are kind of disturbed after seeing this, and they end up comforting each other. And there's a moment where they almost kiss, and that's where it's very clear that they really do have feelings for each other, but they were never able to verbally express it. So then it comes out as the scandal that, his sister and the guy that was trying to pursue Fanny, they ran off, and so it's in the papers and the father is upset, like this looks really bad. It's basically like a big family meeting. And Mary's there, and so then Mary like stands up and starts talking about what the whole family should do, that it's basically Fanny's fault because Fanny didn't say yes to the guy, and so she was proposing like to throw these huge parties, and like if she ends up with Edmund, then that could resolve things and kind of like smooth things over. So at this point, Edmund, he was quiet for a while, but he finally speaks up and he's just basically going off on her and saying, "How dare you, come up in here and try to tell us what to do and, speak over my father and try to, blame Fanny for everything." And he basically is like, he's disappointed and he's basically saying he's done with her and he doesn't want to be with her and she needs to just leave. And so it's just silence after that. And so she leaves. And the part that I want to read from in the movie is when him and Fanny are together, and he finally confesses his feelings for her. So he says, "Fanny, I must confess something." And she says, "Hmm?" And he says, I've loved you all my life." And she says, "I know, Edmund." And he says, "No, Fanny, as a man loves a woman, as a hero loves a heroine, as I have never loved anyone in my entire life. I was so anxious to do what is right that I forgot to do what is right. But if you choose me, after all my blundering and blindness, well, that will be a happiness which no description could reach." And so, of course, she, accepts him and, receives him, and they're able to, be together. And things like it's kind of like a happy ever after in a way. And then it kind of shows what happens to the other people, and they don't have the same happy ever after. They don't have the same outcome.